books is in. The books are in. Yep. They in. They here. Man, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. People who will be reviewing this video in the archives, and everybody that has joined in live to be a part of the discussion, whether you're on Kofi's page or my page. There seems to be a delay in the notifications as it just popped up on my screen as well. But I want everybody to like the show, share the show, and just know that we will be continuing a discussion regarding the nurse. Now, we did this the other day in the middle of a bill that was actually a little lesson on virology and adaptation in viruses. And, you know, Brother Dave B had brought up this nurse, allegedly a nurse. This lady has been floating around social media. So without further ado, let's get into it, man. I'm gonna share my screen, and we're just gonna try to deal with it. I mean, if you know Rizza Islam, if you know what's the brother name from one of them bays, if you know them Taj or one of them bays from Baltimore, anybody, I don't care who it is, you ain't gotta know the people, but if you seen this video on your inbox, you want to share this video. I'm finna tell you why you want to share this video, because you are about to bear witness to something that you have probably never bear witness to in your life. Some of y'all, and some of y'all already know the game. But for people who really just don't tune in and know what's going on, man, you are receiving a message right now in your inbox regarding a lady that says she is from Nashville, Tennessee. She received the vaccine, and 3 days later, she developed Bell's palsy. That's what she said. So let's deal with it. All right, so y'all seen this lady, right? Don't tell me I'm the only one that ain't. I know y'all seen this lady. Y'all seen this, right? It wasn't enough for me to make a Facebook post. There was people sharing the video over and over and over. We got played. Refuse to appeal to emotion. Like the show, share the show. Come on, y'all. Let's get it. Less than a week ago, a video surfaced from an undisclosed location, but somehow it crept on Facebook, then Twitter, and YouTube. Without verification, it leaked into the hands of social media who did not request to verify a single claim. What many people do not know is that once you receive the vaccine, you're issued a card. And in the video, this sister did not provide proof of vaccination. Neither does her name show up as a practicing nurse in the state of Tennessee. This brief presentation is to promote literacy and further discovery in order to verify claims made by those who refuse to provide clarity. Y'all remember this, right? Hold up. Put a video post of play. So just hold on 1 second. I got to play the video. No matter what, I have to play the video. And it should have played when we clicked on it. So give me a second. I might do it like this. Then I'll come out of it. Oh, now y'all don't want to play the video. Oh, there we go.
Hi, I am a registered nurse in Nashville, Tennessee, and my name is Kalila Mitchell. I'm reaching out to everyone about the COVID-19 vaccination. I recently took the COVID-19 vaccination. After the shot, I felt fine, but within 3 days, I went to the doctor because I had problems with my face. The whole left side of my face, actually. I have Bell palsy now. And as you can see, I can't smile. I'm trying to smile. I'm just getting embarrassed. But I just want everyone to know that I think this vaccination is the worst thing ever. And I would not give this to anybody, even my worst enemy. Please, America, they do not care about us. Do not take this vaccination.
All right. Every American, this is what y'all don't know about after receiving the COVID-19 vaccine, is that every American will get a paper card as proof of COVID-19 vaccination. All right. The Department of Defense gave its first glimpse of the card Wednesday. This was literally like early December. Meanwhile, CVS and Walgreens announced they will send pharmacists to assist assisted living facilities to administer the vaccine when it comes available. That was a briefing from the KHN. Now, government to issue COVID vaccination cards. Marylanders who get COVID-19 vaccines will get government issued cards showing they received the vaccines. That is according to the Maryland Department of Health. Vaccination cards are included in the COVID supply kit that comes with the vaccine. I'm going to run it back. Vaccination cards are included in the COVID supply kit that comes with the vaccine. Now, this is just not Maryland, so don't get it twisted. They should be provided to everyone vaccinated, Charles Gisler, spokesman for the state health agency. Gisler said the vaccine supply kits contain everything required to administer a vaccine, including a syringe, swab, and band-aids. Vaccination cards are also being distributed by U.S. states and other organizations in conjunction with the U.S. Center for Disease Control. The state also will store patients' COVID-19 vaccination information in the state's electronic medical records database, which is under IMMU Net. When you get vaccinated, you should receive a vaccination card or a printout that tells you what COVID-19 vaccine you received, the date you received it, and where you received it. When you should receive a paper or electronic version of a fact sheet that tells you more about the specific COVID-19 vaccine you are being offered. Each authorized COVID-19 vaccine has its own fact sheet that contains information to help you understand the risk and benefits of receiving that specific vaccine. All people who get a COVID-19 vaccine should be monitored on site. I'm going to hit exit out. I'm going to stay right here because it's supposed to play a video. It seems to be acting like it don't want to load.
First, we're going to talk about stories to keep you and your family safe and sound today. You're going to need 2 doses of the COVID-19 vaccine to be protected. We've talked about that. But that does mean 2 trips to the doctor. But if you can't keep up with the appointments and barely remember what day it is, because let me tell you, I feel you. You're in luck. The government just releasing the first pictures of vaccination cards. So they're going to be given to anyone who gets the vaccine. The cards then can help you keep track of when you need to get that second shot. You know, it's like a reminder. These are like old school, right? We used to get these for care appointments, doctor's appointments. It could also be useful in the future for getting into places or events where a vaccine is required. Interesting stuff. Starting today, Walmart making it even easier to do everything from the comfort of your couch. The company dropping the $35 minimum needed for free delivery for Walmart Plus subscribers. It goes into effect today. Walmart Plus trying to compete with other big subscription services like Amazon Prime, Amazon Fresh now. Well, 'tis the season for shopping and gifting. It turns out all we really want this year is a gift card to our favorite store. It's according to some new research from one poll. Other things.
All right, I'm gonna leave her right there where she's staying, and I'm gonna get into this. And then when it load right here, I'm gonna hit play again. Nope, this is not the same video.
By this time next week, the first vaccine shipment to Texas, 1 million doses. That's what our state plans to
My apologies.
by the end of the year, if the FDA gives Pfizer emergency approval. The CDC says those who get the shot will be issued a vaccination card. Officials say the goal is getting the second dose on schedule. Stephanie Whitfield explains as part of our new series on vaccines called The Best Shot.
In a matter of days, the first doses of Pfizer's COVID-19 vaccine could be placed in ultra-cold containers and shipped to hospitals all over the country. The Department of State Health Services says once it gets FDA approval, Texas will get more than 224,000 doses of 56,000 doses will be distributed in the Houston area. Healthcare workers and residents at long-term care facilities will be immunized first. The CDC says everyone who gets a shot will get a vaccine card that looks like this. Healthcare providers will fill it out with information about the type of shot, who administered it, and when it's time for the second dose. Pfizer's vaccine requires 2 shots 28 days apart, but each vaccine. Moderna is a pharmaceutical company seeking emergency use authorization. It also requires 2 shots, but 21 days apart. Doctors say it's only after that second dose that you're protected from the virus. That's why it's critical people know which vaccine they get and show up when it's time to get that second dose. Stephanie Whitfield, KHOU 11 News.
Appreciate that, both news media. Now, and exhaust this opportunity by continuing to add on to the fact that you got to have a vaccine card, straight up and down. She neither nor showed a vaccine card or when it was administered and where, or that she was actually a practicing nurse. Now, the other day we pulled up a huge file from the state of Tennessee's health department. The website is in the description. And we pulled up the file, and to no avail, out of all the Mitchells that was listed in the state of Tennessee, her name was not mentioned one single time. But if she received the vaccine shot, then it would have looked like this. Or maybe it would have, you see it right there where it says Pfizer, and then it says COVID-19 EJ1685, and the date received 12/21/20. Or would it look like these people when they received it, with their cards in their hand and their band-aids on their arm? Or maybe like this sister. When she took the Pfizer shot, COVID-19, it got the EH9599, the location, and the day she received it, 12/29/20. Recently, or maybe it would have looked like this lady here, who didn't have the Pfizer shot. She had the Moderna shot, and she is in Murfreesboro, Tennessee. Because a lot of people around here between Murfreesboro and Nashville, they have received the Moderna shot. They didn't get the Pfizer. We ended up with Moderna. Oh, you don't believe me? Here's a lady, Tennessee again, 12/23/20. Right? This was Thursday. Supposedly the same day that the lady who put the video out got her shot. But all of a sudden, she put a video out she said she had developed Bell's palsy 3 days after receiving a vaccine. Unfortunately, she was 2 days out of whack. However, she couldn't do this. Now, this lady that's in this image right here, she works ER, right? She works in the ER. Or it would have looked like this. What shot did this person get? Pfizer BioNTech. Yep. Or maybe it looked like this lady right here. Huh? These are nurses. Oh, or maybe like the first person who received the vaccine with her card in hand. Sorry for the blurry image on the sister, but we all bear witness to this live. Or maybe this gentleman right here who got the Pfizer shot as well. Where the sister card at? I just want to I just want to say a big thank you to all the frontline workers fighting to protect us in the middle of a pandemic. No, I'm not going to do the big boom this time. I really had something lined up where I just wanted to drop the mic on the situation, but I decided to not just be disrespectful toward everybody like that and just leave it with evidence. Because no matter what, you received a vaccine, Khalil Mitchell, if that's the name you want to use, show us the evidence. This one's right here brought to you by the Monster Warrior Clan, Kofi Pieside Research Team, and Mboka, the Dolph Thing clothing line. Please, if you can on Amazon, or go to KofiPiesidetv.com and pick up Spiritual Combat from Spears to Pen. Killmonger's Corner is on Amazon, and Spears of the Massa Volume 1, and Family Connected Apparel for Mboka clothing line. And before I end the Facebook, I want to do this one more time. One more time.
Hi, I am a registered nurse in Nashville, Tennessee, and my name is Khalila Mitchell. I'm reaching out to everyone about the COVID-19 vaccination. I recently took the COVID-19 vaccination. After the shot, I felt fine, but within 3 days, I went to the doctor because I had problems with my face. Actually, I have Bell palsy now. And as you can see, I can't smile. I'm trying to smile. I'm just getting embarrassed. But I just want everyone to know that I think this vaccination is the worst thing ever. And I would not give this to anybody, even my worst enemy. Please, America, they do not care about us. Do not take this vaccination.
Poor sister. Poor sister. Poor sister. All right, so like the show, share the show. This is Shimon Hotep to the Facebook side. Y'all can spin this around however you like. Anybody that got issues or problems with it, and I might need to come down with the hammer, I shall. But I refuse to do that. I refuse to do that. With all due respect, I refuse to do that. I just wanted to show you, right? This information is not new information that just came out. These vaccine cards have been out. We knew this coming into it, that this was important because it tells you when to come back and get your second shot. We knew that it required a 2-dose minimum. So we know what's going on, ladies and gentlemen. I mean, I see that Facebook has got some people viewing it. If you want to join the rest of the discussion, it's on the Matsu Warrior Clan YouTube channel. Join us. We moving forward, and we're about to get into some other news regarding the vaccines and new variant. Peace. All right, so I appreciate everybody tuned in, man. Nah, I don't want to drop the hammer, bro. I don't want to turn nobody off. You know what I'm saying? I want to use this as an opportunity to be able to try to extend a hand out to these people that are going around on YouTube, Twitter, and so on and so forth. So, in order to combat the misinformation, I did this. That was 22 minutes. So, y'all should be able to take the 22 minutes of this video, and you should be able, or it's on, because it's on Facebook too. You should be able to take the 22-minute Facebook video, copy the link, put the URL in your Twitter accounts or whatever accounts that I don't know how y'all do it. Record your screen. I don't know, and share it to your Twitter accounts and at these people who sharing these videos, or make it go viral yourselves. I don't know. I don't have Twitter. I don't have none of that stuff. But real quick though, you know what I'm saying? People talking like I ain't aware of this, but I just want to go ahead and get to a little science, because it's science with Sean time, but it's not really science with Sean Day. Today ain't the science with Sean Day. This was specifically regarding the actual claim. So let's deal with it. So the US confirms its first case of the new COVID strain discovered in the UK. Now, again, for people that, if it's your first time hearing this, it is not a new strand. It is a variant. It is not a new strand. It is a variant. If you look, they use variant right here. Colorado, Rob, right? But they continue to say that because it's easy to say strand. They're not scientists. This lady here is not a scientist, right? So it says the first case of a new and potentially more infectious strain of COVID-19 has been confirmed in the United States, Colorado health officials said Tuesday. Again, it's a variant. If you don't believe me, wait till we get to the third paragraph. The Colorado State Laboratory confirmed and notified the CDC in prevention of the case. The individual was a male in his 20s who was currently in isolation in Elbert County and has no travel history. There's a lot we don't know about this new COVID-19 variant, but scientists in the United Kingdom are warning our world that it is significantly more contagious. The health and safety of Coloradans in our top priority, and he will closely be monitored and all of that good stuff. So let me stop right here. First of all, it's not a new strain. Even though they're running down here saying, suggestion that the culprit behind Britain's recent spike in the case, a new strain referred to as this right here, it ain't confirmed. It's not confirmed that it's an actual new strain. It's a variant. Because if it's a new strand, then it's going to have to be mapped. The genome is going to have to be broke down. Then they're going to have to go in there and make the adjustments with the vaccine, the mRNA vaccine, which they can do it with no problem and get on top of it. So yeah, this is helping COVID-19 spread quicker. But we are also helping COVID-19 spread quicker because I looked on my niece's Facebook pages and all of my family's accounts and things of that nature. These younger people, and they in the clubs, no mask on. They drinking, no mask on. They eating. You know, of course, you can't eat with your or drink with your mask on, but you know what I'm saying. Like me, I'm drinking and then I put my mask right back on. Then I sip again. And I put, you know, I don't want. You know, they real close and compact with one another. They ain't spread out, and somebody can hawk or cough. The particles get in the air, and next thing you know, if they have been infected with COVID-19 and they hawk or cough, it's in the atmosphere and it is now looking for a host. And dumb behinds is gonna be the host. Cause you everywhere. You still trying to live your best life. You don't care nothing about F COVID. It ain't gonna do nothing to me. You know what I'm saying? You bulletproof. But it ain't you we worried about because you young and dumb. It's the elderly. It's people with pre-existing conditions. It's all of these things that could affect other people around you. And don't think just because you're young and in your youth that it can't kick kids. There have been children who have transitioned from the virus. I see we got we got some people in the building, man, and I appreciate everybody in the building. I haven't been able to read the chat. But what I'm gonna do is, you know what I'm saying, I'm gonna continue here. Since I got some people attention, I'm going to try to address some of the things that are in the chat, but I do want to make sure that you like the show and share the show on behalf of the team. And I do want to address the age of Shango real quick. No, masks are effective. They're not ineffective, they're effective. If everyone around you is wearing a mask, the mask prevents you from spreading it, and it prevents other people from spreading it. So it can't be ineffective when we have studies. We have scientific studies that actually show, prove, and demonstrate this. Yeah, we want to continue to also washing our hands and keeping our distance. But we also want to mask up. We also want to mask up. So let's do this real quick. I don't want to leave all y'all empty-handed, so I do want to give you a little bit of game before I go on out. Let me see if I can pull up the brother Vince real quick. And let me see if I can get to the brother Vince. Hold up. Let me not share my screen. Let me get the. Hold on. There's two things I ain't did yet. I thought I did. Well, one thing I ain't do is I dropped the link, but I dropped it in the Masa. Let me go ahead and put it in here. And nah, you ain't got to do all of that, bro. There was the link. If hey, just Shango, bro, if you want to hop in and you want to, after you look up your studies, you want to hit the link to hop in, and you know you can share your screen and you can go ahead and talk until then. You know what I'm saying? We'll give you that time to come on. We give you that time to do that. But while he doing that though, you know, I showed y'all this the other day, but I didn't let it rock out from the beginning. So I'm gonna do this for a little bit because it ain't gonna take too long, and we ain't gonna be on here too much longer. But this will give us time for for our brother to, you know, get his sources together, and if he want to present them to the people, that then we gonna listen to him and we gonna let him.
I'm there for 38 years working.
All right, hold on. Let me show Vince.
The coolest things on the planet, cooler than anything else that exists. And part of my goal is to convince you that they're really amazing. I absolutely love viruses. I have a passion for them that few people have, and I want to impart some of that to you. Now, as a professor at a medical school, I have zero teaching obligations. I don't have to teach this course. I've been doing this for 10 years because I want you down here on this campus to know about viruses. When I started doing this 10 years ago, there was no virology course at Morningside. And I thought, you guys are paying 60 grand a year and you're not learning about viruses. This is completely unacceptable. So that's my motivation. And I guarantee you, you're gonna really like this course. You're gonna like what you learn. It's not easy, but in the end, you're gonna know more about viruses than most people on Earth. And this is a great time to be taking this course because, as you know, we have a brand new virus emerging from China and circulating around the globe. And everything you have heard about it on Twitter and Facebook and so forth is probably wrong. But here you're going to get the facts. By the end of this course, you're going to understand exactly what is going on. Here's what I feel. If you want to understand life, if you want to understand human health and human disease, you need to know about viruses. We live and prosper in a little. Viruses infect every living thing on the planet, everything. Nothing escapes a virus infection. We regularly eat and breathe in billions of virus particles, probably on a daily basis. And viral genomes are part of our genome as well. They're truly pervasive. They're everywhere. And what is really remarkable is the extent of viruses on the planet. And here's one example. In the waters of the planet, just the oceans, salt water, there are over 10 to the 30th bacteriophages. These are viruses that infect bacteria. 10 to the 30th. That is too big for you to really comprehend. So here, let me put it two ways for you. First of all, in a teaspoon of seawater, there are a couple of million virus particles. So next time you go swimming in the ocean and you spit water at your friend, you're aerosolizing viruses. Completely harmless, but there are viruses in there. A bacteriophage particle weighs about a femtogram. So if we multiply that times 10 to the 30th, we get more biomass by 1,000-fold of all the elephants on Earth. So now you're starting to see how many particles there are. And then if we put them end to end, each of those 10 to the 30th particles, they reach 100 million light years into space. That's farther than the nearest galaxy, way beyond our solar system, of course. Incredibly long distance. And these are things you can't even see. That's the amazing part. There's so many of them. And this is just in the oceans. And in this course, we're going to talk a bit about the impact of those viruses on the oceans and on global biogeochemistry. They have enormous roles to play. So the numbers is part of the way viruses are successful. Whales, for example, are infected with members of a family of viruses called caliciviruses. These are related to the viruses that can give you gastroenteritis. We'll be talking about that later in the course. Gastroenteritis is vomiting and diarrhea. We've all had it. These are some viruses that commonly cause it. They can also infect whales. They can cause rashes and blisters and also gastroenteritis, not just in whales, but other marine mammals. Some of these whale viruses we think may infect humans, spill over from animals into humans. That's a word I will use a lot in this course. And these whales excrete 10 to the 13th virus particles a day in their feces. That's a lot of virus particles going into the ocean. There are lots of whales out there, and whales aren't the only ones infected. This is just another example of the viral numbers game, if you will. And that's a calicivirus particle in its glorious color. Of course, these viruses are not colored at all. We color them because it looks good and it's informative. But as you'll see later, we know lots of very detailed structures of virus particles that we can use to understand how they work. So a little bit more about the oceans. Here's a set of pie charts showing you the amount of viruses relative to protists and prokaryotes. So on the left, we have by biomass, and you can see the yellow is the prokaryotes, the bacteria, largely. They constitute most of the biomass in the ocean. There's lots of microbial activity in the ocean. In fact, it accounts for most of the oxygen that we're breathing, the photosynthetic bacteria in the oceans. And viruses in blue, just a very small part of the biomass. However, if we now look at particle number, that's on the right, or abundance, viruses constitute 94% of the particles in the ocean. If you just count a bacterium and a virus as one each, now viruses win the race. They are more abundant in particles than anything else. And these viruses are not just bad news. Someone famously said years ago, a virus is a bit of bad news wrapped in a protein. Well, I think that's completely wrong. Sometimes it can be. But as we'll see later, in the oceans, these viruses are responsible for recycling of a great deal of the organic matter to make it available. So they have great roles to play. And I just want to again point out, in a liter of coastal water, there's more virus particles than people on Earth. And as you'll see, they have the greatest genetic diversity on the planet. Nothing comes close to having the number of genes in toto that viruses have. Another sobering number, at this point in time, today, there are about 10 to the 16th genomes of HIV, human immunodeficiency virus, on the planet. It's also a huge number. And we know this because we know how many people are infected, about 37 million currently. We know how many genomes they typically have, so we can do the math very, very easily. It means that for all the drugs we have to treat HIV, we have over 40, and they're very effective. And now if you are infected with the virus, you can live a life without getting disease because of these drugs. Yet, within these 10 to the 16th genomes, there exists resistance to all of them already. Because as you'll see, mutations arise randomly. And so no matter how many drugs we make against this particular virus, there will always be resistance out there. And that's a problem, which we'll talk about when we talk about AIDS. How many of you right now have a virus infection? Raise your hand. I guess you don't want to identify, right? I understand that. But you all do. You're all infected. I don't mean to single anyone out. I am infected. In fact, we all have right now about a dozen different herpes viruses in us, including herpes simplex, 1 and 2 varicella zoster virus, chickenpox virus, although if you're vaccinated, you might have avoided that one, cytomegalovirus, Epstein-Barr virus, and then other herpes viruses, 6, 7, and 8. Serological studies have shown in the US, over 90% of the population has these viruses in them. Once you get them, you can't get rid of them. I like to say, unlike love, herpes is forever. It's true. And we will talk about why they stick with you and why you can't ever get rid of them. I have to say, I have an Instagram account where I put pictures of viruses and so forth, and I regularly get notices from people who say, my herpes was cured from Dr. So-and-so. Let me give you his or her number. It's wrong. You cannot cure herpes, and you'll learn why in the herpes lecture. So we each have at least a dozen herpes viruses, but we have many, many more as well. Let me tell you. You know that we have a microbiome, right? Every part of you has certain bacteria associated with it. Your skin, your eyes, your respiratory, gastrointestinal tract, everywhere. There's a different collection of bacteria that are good. They're beneficial. We're just starting to learn why. But there's also viruses in every part of your body. We have a virome. And on the left are pie charts showing RNA and DNA viruses in different organ systems, nervous system, respiratory, urogenital tract, etc. Even in health, we have viruses in all these places. All of us. If I did a survey of all of you, I would find viruses like this in all of you, yet you're fine. And that's the interesting part. We think these are beneficial. We have some evidence for this, which we'll touch on in this course. We are currently looking everywhere for viruses.
All right, give me a second, man. So that's a little brief description in regard to viruses, and we'll continue in just a second. I just want to deal with the brother in his claim, but unfortunately, it seems that the brother don't want to come and demonstrate. You know what I'm saying? I really don't have no problem with what he's saying. I just think that he ain't interpreting the data in the correct way. And instead, he want to type us to death when he could just hit the link and then just demonstrate. I mean, listen, bro. The link is for you to come in and show us that masks aren't helpful. Let's go back to your claim. Let's put it on the screen and let's see if we can learn from your mistake. You said, where you gonna get it? Where you at? Out of 50,000 people who died in the UK, only 380 or so were healthy people under 60. You sure about the 50,000 people that died regarding COVID? You sure about that? Because first of all, there's 350,000 people dead from COVID, not 50,000. So let's get that straight. Facts, Corey. News reports are not scientists. But let's go. Shango, what studies? All right, so I'm close. Masks are ineffective, studies show. That's what he said right here. I'm sharing my screen. Yeah, there goes his claim right there. All right, so the claim is masks are ineffective, studies show. Okay. I'm gonna be specific. CDC, November 27, 2020. You used the 2018 article that you really didn't show, and I don't even know what. I'm just going by what you said. But I told you I'm gonna use the CDC against you. 2020, not even a month old. It says CDC. Look, they dealing with homemade masks. They dealing with everything. How to make a mask. CDC recommends that you wear a mask in public settings around people who don't live in your household, especially when other social distance measures are difficult to maintain. Masks within at least 2 layers of a fabric are most likely to reduce the spread of COVID-19 when they are widely used by people in public settings. Simple masks can be made at home, washable, breathable fabric, and may help prevent the spread of COVID-19. Sewn masks, and then they give you the material, a tutorial on how to actually make the mask. And then non-sewn masks, they give you the tutorial on how to make those. And then it says, make sure your mask fits snuggable but comfortable against the side of the face. Completely cover the nose and mouth. Make sure your mask is secured with ties on the ear loops. Make sure your mask includes multiple layers of fabric, allows for breathing without restriction, can be laundered and machine dried without damage or changed to shape. More information, Jerome Adams can provide you with a video on that. You know what I'm saying? So, you know, you have to get down with that now. So let's do this. How to protect yourself and others. All right. It's going to get us right straight to it. Everyone should wash their hands, do all of these things right here. Avoid close contact. Cover your mouth and nose with a mask when around others. Masks help you from getting or spreading the virus. Masks help you, Shango, from getting or spreading the virus. You can spread COVID-19 to others even if you don't feel sick. Everyone should wear a mask. You want to refute that? I mean, I give you, you know what I'm saying? I give you an opportunity to go ahead and do that. There's a link right there. I don't care about a video. Where's the actual study, bro? Okay, so you want to study, right? All right, watch this. He wants to study. Journal of Nature. Face mask. What the data say? What the data say? You want this? I can give it to you in the chat. I can let you read it. I don't like cherry picking or doing anything like that. So you ain't got to check anything that I got to say about it. But there's tons of data available on this whole thing. You see what I'm saying? They're going through the actual breakdown in this whole article about certain things. So that's why I'm saying I don't want to cherry pick it, but I just don't want to leave you with that. There's no evidence for what you're arguing at all. There are studies. There are studies. All right. There are studies. You want me to hit the link? Because I'll stop when you hit the link, bro. And I'll give you back those. So I'm gonna go ahead and give you this. The flip side, yeah, there's studies showing people improperly wearing masks. They got a mask covering up their mouth, and then they ain't even doing anything like that. We have to test everything, right? We have to scrutinize everything. So I'm not trying to argue with you. I just ask you to do what you need to do. You told me to go look for myself. That's crazy. Now, if you don't want to wear no mask, you don't have to wear no mask. So I just gave you two sources. And we already did a video on this mask wearing because we got into this right here, bro. You see this right here? You see this? This is your study right here. It's a time-lapse image show how cough droplets spread from a person wearing an N95 mask that has a valve to expel or exhale. This is how they testing the mask. This is why they saying you don't want the mask with the valves on it, because it still can come out of the mask. And then they show you another video where if you got the right type of mask on it, if you cough, how it doesn't come out the front, but it could barely come out the side, reducing the amount of spread. I don't like doing this, dog. But I gave you the CDC. You went CDC, I gave you CDC. Can I get back the viruses, or you gonna join the link? You need to update your research. I gave you stuff for 2020, bro. I don't need to look at 2018. That's outdated information. You can't use outdated information to argue a current point. Science is self-correcting. Science gives us the ability to change over and over and over and fix the things that we need to fix. Now, if we're gonna stay on the mask, bro, let me know. Hit the link and join the conversation. Well, I want to just at least get some value out of all the people that we have in the chat for the next like 20 minutes, so that they can learn about viruses. I'd rather you demonstrate. Because wasn't no COVID in 2018. It's 2020, 2019, 2020. It's 2020. The science is going to be 2021. The science is there.
And I want to play you this movie on the left there. We can now access anything on the planet to look for viruses. And there, I'm going to show you how to access the virome of whale breath. What they've done here is they've made a drone which is piloted by the people on the ship. And as it passes over the whales, a little dish opens up and it collects whale breath. I don't know if you could catch that. It's pretty quick. That little dish coming up is like a petri dish. It opens up, the whale breath goes in one more time. And they can collect it, they can bring it back to the lab, sequence it, and find out how many viruses are in whale breath. Isn't that something you wanted to know? You could use that at a party. You said, you know how many viruses there are in whale breath? There are a lot. So we can sample any part of the planet, and we are. We'd like to know what's there. Just a few weeks ago, I saw a paper where they went up to a glacier in the western part of China, and they dug very deep and pulled out ice cores, brought them back to the lab and thawed them, and they find viruses. And these ice cores are 15,000 years old. So we can really understand what's on the planet by doing this kind of sampling. It's quite remarkable. I mentioned at the beginning that we have viral genomes as part of our DNA. And that's illustrated here on this pie chart. As you know, our genome is 3.2 billion bases in length. It was sequenced many years ago, and many genomes are being sequenced right now because the cost has dropped substantially.
All right, hold on, y'all. I'm sorry, man. I'm sorry. My bad. My bad, y'all. I had to go back in my vault. All right, so published November 18, 2020, effectiveness of adding a mask recommendation to other public health measures to prevent SARS-CoV-2 infection in the Danish mask wearers. All right, so this is an abstract. Observational evidence suggests that mask wearing mitigates transmission of severe acute respiratory syndrome, coronavirus 2. It is uncertain if this observed association arises through protection of uninfected wearers, protected effort, via reduced transmission from infected mask wearers, source control, or both. Objective, to assess whether recommending surgical mask use outside the home reduces wearers' risk for SARS-CoV-2 infection in a setting where masks were uncommon and not among recommended public health measures. Design, randomized controlled trial using the Dan Mask 19. Danish study to assess face mask for protection against COVID-19 infection. This is a clinical trial that you can find on clinicaltrials.gov, NCT 04337541. All right. This was the setting was Denmark, April and May 2020. Participants, adults spending more than 3 hours per day outside the home without occupational mask use. Intervention, encouragement to follow social distance measures for coronavirus disease 2019, plus either no mask recommendation or recommendation to wear a mask when outside the home, among other persons, together with a supply of 50 surgical masks and instructions for proper use. Measurements, primary outcome was SARS-CoV-2 infection in mask wearer at 1 month by antibody testing, polymerase chain reaction, or hospital diagnosis. The secondary outcome was PCR positivity for the other respiratory virus. Results. A total of 3,030 participants were randomly assigned to the recommendation to wear masks, and 2,994 were assigned to control. 4,862 completed the study. SARS-CoV-2, 42 participants. Recommended mask 1.8% and 53 control participants 2.1%. The between group difference was 0.3 percentage point. And then it goes on to say multiple imputations accounting for loss to follow-up yielded similar results. Although the difference observed was not statistically significant, the 95% CIs are compatible with the 46% reduction to a 23% increase in infection. All right. In conclusion, results, missing data, variable adherence, patient reported finding on home test, no blindings and no assessments, or rather mask could decrease disease transmission from mask wearers to others. Conclusion, The recommendation to wear surgical masks to supplement other public health measures did not reduce SARS-CoV-2 infection rate among wearers by more than 50% in the community with modest infection rates. Some degree of social distancing and uncommon general mask use, the data were compatible with lesser degrees of self-protection. Primary funding was the Sadler Foundation. You want the complete study, you actually can have the complete study. This does not mean anything to me. I know wearing a mask is a part of the safety measures that are not handed down by the CDC, but all over the world. They are telling you to wear a mask, wash your hands, keep your distance. Because if you're in an environment where somebody coughs or hawks, that virus is activated. It is in the atmosphere. It is airborne. Here you go. All right, so we have Sister Maria Santos. She says people are experiencing psychosis. The COVID-19 is a fear-based flu heightened by the mainstream media. Sister, the SARS-CoV-2 is not a mainstream flu by no means. The mainstream flu does not get into your respiratory, attack your heart, your brain, your eyes, your feet, your lungs, your liver, your intestines. The typical flu does not do that. I don't think you understood how the conclusion came about, so I gave you the source, Shango, so that you actually can. We got infected in like February, correct? Some people get shot in the head and live. Doesn't mean headshots aren't deadly. No, the tests were effective, bro, because those tests help bring out that it keeps you from spreading. Listen, masks are not about everybody else. It's about you. It's preventing you from passing something on. So when you're wearing a mask, you're saying, man, I ain't trying to give you what I got. And when I'm wearing a mask, I'm saying, bro, I ain't trying to give you what I got. I don't understand why we stuck on mask here. The tests are effective. Anyone who has gotten a flu shot has the SARS in them. Maria Santos, sister, I think this is your first time ever watching these shows. That would be very inaccurate. There's not a source in the scientific community, not even in the pseudo community, that'll tell you that anyone who got a flu shot has SARS in them. Thank you, Zane. SARS is not influenza. The flu is an influenza type situation. You're confusing a lot of data there, which is causing a lot of pseudoisms, a lot of confusion in your camp. The flu is not like COVID-19, bro. Not everybody is recommended to get a flu shot. That's why it's seasonal. All right, let me get back to the nitty gritty. Y'all argue that in the chat. We right, y'all they breaking the bill. They're breaking the bill. Let's deal with viruses. Let's see if he talk about the flu.
The coding genes are very small, as you can see here, only 1.5%. And there are many other sequences that do other things, but I want to point you to this 8.3%, which is labeled LTR retrotransposons. We're going to talk about exactly what these are in a lecture later on. But essentially, a good fraction of these are remnants of retrovirus infections that happened long before we were Homo sapiens. They happened to our ancestors and they were passed on down to us. And in fact, some of the genes from those retroviruses have been co-opted over evolution to now have uses in us. Some of these protein coding genes came from retrovirus infections. In fact, there are sequences of viruses littered throughout our genome that are not shown here. And we are wondering what effects they have. Are they useful? And if so, what are they doing? And people are starting to get interesting results about that. Now, over the years, as you will see, most work on viruses and most virus discovery is driven by disease. And that's illustrated in this graph, which shows the causes of 2017 global deaths. And you can see the biggest killer, cardiovascular diseases, almost 18 million deaths globally in 1 year. And I put arrows next to some of the places where viruses are participating. And here, the clearest one is HIV, the causative agent of AIDS, of course, almost 1 million deaths in 2017. But there are other viruses that may not be obvious to you. For example, a lot of hepatitis is viral, so that's up there in the top list. A lot of diarrheal diseases are viral, respiratory diseases as well. And so because of all this, this drives a lot of research on viruses, but more and more we are understanding the role that viruses play in ecosystems and in beneficial roles on the planet. And so the research is expanding beyond just a cause of disease. But amazingly, despite having all these viruses around us, you have so many in you and around you, the air is full of them right now, you're fine. You rarely get sick. You get a cold now and then, maybe you get gastroenteritis. If you're healthy, you don't get sick. So why is this? Let's explore why we don't get infected by all these viruses. And the first reason is that most of them just pass through us. And here is a result of a study from supermarkets in Washington, D.C., where they bought cabbage and brought it back to the lab and looked for viruses. And they found that each serving of cabbage would have about 10 to the 8th particles of this particular virus. It's an insect virus that infects this caterpillar called the cabbage looper. So if you ever eat coleslaw, this virus is on it. If you eat cabbage, and even if you cook it, the virus will still be on it. It'll probably be inactive, but you will still be ingesting it. But these can't infect us, so they pass right through us. So a lot of the viruses we encounter can't reproduce in our cells, so they pass through it. The same with viruses that we inhale or that land on our skin. On the bottom is a different study where they looked at viral RNA sequences in human feces. You can easily do this. You can collect feces and sequence it. The most common RNA virus is called pepper mild mottle virus. It's in 90% of specimens. So most people apparently eat peppers. I didn't know this. This is a pepper that's infected with the virus. Of course, if you saw that in a supermarket, you probably wouldn't buy it. But they can also be infected without showing symptoms, and you'll eat them, and these viruses pass through you. They don't infect you. And I get emails pretty regularly because now you can have your fecal virome analyzed. Did you know there's a company that will do that for you? And I get emails saying, oh my God, I have this pepper virus. What am I going to do if I see a doctor? I said, no, you don't have to see anyone because these viruses don't replicate in you. And nothing that I ever see is really pathogenic. So that one reason is that they don't replicate on us. Many viruses are good. I call them beneficial viruses. And I have 3 examples for you. On the left is a grass that lives around the hot springs in places like Yellowstone National Park. If you've been to any of those, you see hot water spewing up from where it's heated deep from the earth. And around it, there are grasses that are growing. They are thermotolerant grasses. Here's one of them, Dicanthelium lanuginosum. Can grow up to 55 degrees Celsius. You can bring this grass in the laboratory and grow it at 55 degrees. And a number of years ago, people found that this grass is infected with a fungus. This fungus here, it's all the little squiggly lines, curvularia. If you take the fungus out, then the plants can't grow at high temperatures anymore. So somehow the fungus is conferring thermotolerance. But it's even more complicated. Inside the fungus is a virus that infects the fungus. And if you have just the fungus without the virus in the plant, it doesn't confer thermotolerance. So the virus helps. This is a 3-way mutualism, plant, fungus, virus, that allows the plant to grow and the others, of course, get a place to live. Another very cool one on the right. I don't know if you've heard of parasitoid wasps. These are wasps that lay their eggs in caterpillars. And then the eggs hatch and the new wasps eat the caterpillar and burst out. It's like Alien, right? Basically, but this is real life. And what these wasps do when they put their eggs in, they inject a virus along with the egg. It's called a polydnavirus. And that virus is coded for in the wasp genome. The wasp genome encodes the viral genes that make up the protein shell of the virus. And then this virus doesn't replicate in the caterpillar. All it does is produce proteins that immunosuppress the caterpillar so it will not reject the eggs and the larvae of the wasp. So that's why the virus is put in along with the wasp eggs. So of course, this virus is good for the wasp. It's not good for the caterpillar, obviously, but neither is the wasp. But another example of a beneficial arrangement. And these are just there are tons of them throughout the living world. Examples where we can see viruses engaged in these kinds of interactions and they're beneficial in some way to at least one of the hosts. Now, you may ask, does this happen in mammals? Does it happen in us? We don't know if it happens in us, if our viruses are beneficial or not, because we can't experiment on us, right? We ethically cannot do experiments, but one day there will be broadly acting antivirals, like broadly acting antimicrobials for bacteria, and we will give them to people under certain conditions, and it will get rid of most of the virome, and we'll be able to see if it's bad or not. But in the meantime, we don't know. But we do know in mice, the answer seems to be yes. So here's an experiment where mice were grown free of bacteria, germ-free mice, that's GF. And here are conventional mice where their gut tracts are full of bacteria, the normal microbiome. So on the right is a section of the small intestine. You can see the villi here, conventional mice, so they grew up with a normal gut microbiome. Nice villi. And then on the bottom, they have stained for a protein CD3, which is a marker of lymphocytes, T lymphocytes. And you can see there are some lymphocytes here. Now, if you do the same with the mice grown without bacteria, the villi are messed up. You can see they're morphologically wrong, and there are not many lymphocytes in these areas anymore. Okay, so you need a microbiome for proper development and for proper development of the immune system. The mouse in the middle was infected with a mouse neurovirus. That is mouse neurovirus MNV. And you can see that some of the abnormality has been restored. Not entirely, but it's a little better than the germ-free, but some of the lymphocytes have come back as well. So apparently this virus is restoring whatever function it is that the microbiome provided. So these are very tantalizing experiments. There's a lot to do, but they suggest that viruses, at least in a mammal, can have a beneficial role. The other reason most of you are well is that you have a really good immune system that works most of the time. And most of these viruses that you inhale, if they happen to be able to grow in you, they won't, because your immune system will take care of it. Now, if your immune system is down, let's say you are immunosuppressed. If you have an organ transplant, if you have AIDS, you will be immunosuppressed. Even measles will immunosuppress you. Then the simplest virus infection can be lethal. So that points out the importance of the immune system in keeping viruses from growing in us. So those are some of the reasons why you can be healthy with all these viruses around you. Here's another cool example that I want to give you. It's again a virus that infects just about everyone on the planet. It's a polyoma virus shown there in the middle. And this is interesting. It infects us pretty early in life. We usually get it from our family members, spread via respiratory secretions, saliva, aerosols made by talking and so forth. And you get infected, and then you're infected for life. And if you're healthy, you usually have no symptoms. If you are immunosuppressed at some point in your life, you can develop serious disease. But these viruses can be shed routinely in respiratory secretions and in urine as well. And some people are secreting 100,000 particles per ml in urine. And so I always like to remind you that when you go into a public restroom, every time the toilet flushes, it creates an aerosol. I don't want to get you paranoid, but that aerosol is likely to have the virome of the person who was just before you. And maybe by the end of this course, someone told me this a couple of years ago, they no longer went outside or ate anything because they were paranoid. I hope you don't end up the same way. Anyway, these polyoma viruses, because they spread within families, they can be used to study human migration. And that's what this map is. So the dotted line is the progress of Homo sapiens out of Africa into Europe and Asia and the Americas, determined by genome sequence. The black lines are the migration of Homo sapiens based on infections with this virus. We can tell different lineages because they each have a unique polyoma virus. As I said, it tends to be spread in families, so you can track movement of families by looking at what they've been infected with. And you can see it mimics the movement out of Africa and even provides more detail on the migration of humans than the genome does. So again, that's a harmless virus, turns out to be useful to track where people have moved. So that's just a little hint of what's to come. We're going to dive into all of these topics in great detail in this course. The viruses are amazing. It really is a remarkable subject. One year, a student wrote after the course ended that every lecture she had something to tell her roommate about that she didn't know. And I think you'll find the same thing this year as well. It's a remarkable subject, and I want to emphasize that it's an integrative science. What do I mean? I mean, to understand virology, you need to understand not just viruses, but chemistry, biochemistry, cell biology, physiology. If you want to understand how viruses spread, you have to know a little sociology, certainly epidemiology. You have to know a lot of subjects. And in the course of learning about viruses here, you're going to learn a lot of that ancillary stuff. Several students in the past have told me that studying viruses made biology make sense. And that's because it's integrative. It really brings a lot of things together. And these are my goals for the course. I want to give you a big picture. The way this course is arranged is not by virus. If you go to a lot of colleges and universities throughout the US, you will find virology courses. Some of them mimic this one, but others teach by virus. You'll have an influenza lecture, a herpes lecture, a retrovirus lecture. That is the wrong way to teach an introductory virology course. You're not going to learn any principles that way. All you're going to know is a collection of facts about different viruses. That's great for a more advanced course, but for an introductory course, you need to know the principles, and that's what I'm going to teach you. If you notice the syllabus, every lecture is for the first 13 lectures or so, it's a step in the replication cycle of a virus. We're going to go through it slowly, and then the second half of the course explores how viruses cause disease. And we have a cast of viruses that we're going to come back to all the time, so you don't have to learn every virus. But in the end, you're going to have a great overview of how viruses work. So that's what I mean by I want to teach it to you as an integrative discipline, not a collection of viruses, diseases, or genes. And as I said earlier, you're going to learn things that amaze the uninformed and the informed and frighten the uninformed. Right now, a lot of fright out there about this new coronavirus is because of lack of information. And I'm going to show you how to get that information in the end. And I guarantee you that in 2 or 3 years, when another outbreak occurs, you're going to remember this course and say, now I understand what's going on because of what you taught us. And as I said, we're in a perfect moment now because we have a new virus circulating. And just this morning, I pulled these headlines down to show you what I'm going to teach you to be able to do. So here on the top, they don't go to Wuhan, don't leave Wuhan. This virus, of course, originated at a fish market in Wuhan. And the virus could mutate and spread further. Okay. And here's another article. China warns virus could mutate and spread. Where did all this come from? Came from the National Health Commission vice minister. there is the possibility of viral mutation. What you are going to learn in this course is that this is wrong. There is no possibility of virus mutation. It's already happening. Viruses mutate with every reproduction cycle. That coronavirus has already mutated extensively as it goes from one person to another. What they mean, of course, is that it will eventually have a mutation that does something like make it spread more, okay? But the distinction is subtle, and the health minister doesn't know it, and then the press just picks it up and amplifies it, and that's what you see. And so every outbreak I see, there are headlines like this: the virus may mutate. And from year to year, they do not seem to learn the fundamentals. But you're going to learn it in this course. You're going to understand why this statement is incorrect and what kind of consequences mutation might have for viruses in a human population. I guarantee when you see these headlines in 5 years, you're going to understand why they're not correct. Now, one of the things I'm going to do in this course is to have quizzes as we talk here to give you a break. So you can do this on a laptop, a cell phone, a tablet, whatever you have that's internet connected. You have to go to Socrative, and that's the link there, bsocrative.com/login-student, and you'll be asked to log in. The room name is virus. What else could it be, right? And here is our first quiz, just to make sure it works. This is, which statement is true?
Hey, before he even go any further, because it's a lot of people that have already been paying attention to what we actually been teaching, learning, and sharing on this channel with Science with Sean. So in his statement below, which statement is true? All viruses make us sick and can be lethal. Our immune system can manage most viral infections. Humans are usually infected with one virus at a time. Or the press is usually correct in the virology reporting. Or number 5, our immune system cannot handle most viral infections. Before we go further, which one of these statements is true? Just drop the number in the chat. If you don't know, just say you don't know. We all here to learn. So if you don't know, just say you don't know, and then, you know what I'm saying? And then you're gonna find out if it's true, you know, which one it is. I'm gonna leave it on the screen right there. Like Uncle always say, man, we learn the university information in the conscious community. We're ahead of the game. This free college. This a whole free lecture, yo. Like, this is a college course on virology. You would have never signed up for that when you was in college. Come on now. We got some people watching, yo. Which statement is true? What we're dealing with right now, if you just popped on, is which statement do you feel is true? Sunline, you just keep on dropping numbers. Which statement do you think is true? I'm going to read them again. All viruses make us sick and can be lethal. Put a 1 in the chat. Our immune system can manage most viral infections. Put a 2 in the chat. Humans are usually infected with one virus at a time. Put a 3 in the chat. The press is usually correct in their virology reporting. Put a 4 in the chat. Our immune system cannot handle most viral infections. Put a 5 in the chat. I know there's a delay, so I'm actually just trying to, you know, let everybody answer who's actually watching it, who can type in the chat. You know what I'm saying? Nunu, I don't see your answer. I don't see your answer. What the number one troll at, yo? Troll always here, being messy. Troll ain't showed up yet. Cool. All right. I'm waiting on a couple of more people to answer, and then we gonna hit the play button. I would have took biology too, man. Peace, Gary. Appreciate you tuning in, brother. Fitz gonna give me 2 answers. I'm shoot him. Okay. Now I know we can get some more people to answer, but I think a lot of people just tuning in, listening. You know what I'm saying? Look, Sunline gonna say 5, 3, 2 in that order. Boy, you crazy.
A, all viruses make us sick and can be lethal. B, our immune system can manage most viral infections. C, humans are usually infected with one virus at a time. D, the press is usually correct in their virology reporting. And E, our immune system cannot handle most infections. Which one is true? This is not recorded in any way. It doesn't count for your grade. It's just to make sure you're getting it. Some of them are straightforward and you will get, others you won't, and then I'll explain it to you. It's a good way to teach the material to you. And at one point in the near future, you will get 100%. But it will take a few lectures before that happens. At least that's been my experience. How'd we do? Yes, we got, holy shit. You already got 100%. That never happened. You must be exceptional. Yes, our immune system can manage most infections. That's the answer.
The answer is 2. Our immune systems can manage most viral infections. That's a fact. That's a fact. All right. So we know that. So let's continue. Shout out to everybody who dropped a 2 in the chat. The ones who put 5s and 3s, you owe us push-ups.
Hey, that's a good sign for the rest of the course, right? So I'll do that periodically at 3 or 4 per lecture, just to make sure that you're doing well. So let's now define a virus. We're going to need this definition for the rest of the course. What is a virus? I have to tell you that every year I change this. I struggle to include what we have learned. And the first definition from 10 years ago that I gave is different from this one. And this year's definition is an infectious, obligate, intracellular parasite comprising genetic material, can be DNA or RNA, often surrounded by a protein coat and sometimes a membrane. It's kind of a wishy-washy definition. There are a lot of qualifications in there, but that's the way it is. Let's take it apart. So infectious, I actually debated dropping that from this year's definition, but I think it's an important concept. Infectious means the virus can go from host to host and cell to cell and get in it, because an obligate intracellular parasite means viruses have to get into cells in order to reproduce. They will not reproduce in the air or on your skin. They have to get inside of a cell. So infectious, they move from cell to cell, host to host. Obligate, they have to get in the cell. Now, parasite is something that takes something from another organism and damages it. So taking nutrients is considered damaging, because otherwise you would have those nutrients. And you'll see many ways that viruses damage their hosts. And you may be confused. At some point, we're going to talk about, say, viruses that infect us without harming us. How can that happen? Well, they're still taking something, because in order for them, I have to tell you that every year I change this. I struggle to include what we have learned. And the first definition from 10 years ago that I gave is different from this one. And this year's definition is an infectious, obligate, intracellular parasite comprising genetic material, can be DNA or RNA, often surrounded by a protein coat and sometimes a membrane. It's kind of a wishy-washy definition. There are a lot of qualifications in there, but that's the way it is. Let's take it apart. So infectious, I actually debated dropping that from this year's definition, but I think it's an important concept. Infectious means the virus can go from host to host and cell to cell and get in it, because an obligate intracellular parasite means Viruses have to get into cells in order to reproduce. They will not reproduce in the air or on your skin. They have to get inside of a cell. So infectious, they move from cell to cell, host to host. Obligate, they have to get in the cell. Now, parasite is something that takes something from another organism and damages it. So taking nutrients is considered damaging because otherwise you would have those nutrients. And you'll see many ways that viruses damage their hosts. And you may be confused at some point. We're going to talk about, say, viruses that infect us without harming us. How can that happen? Well, they're still taking something because in order for them to make more virus particles, they have to take something from the host. So it may not be serious or overt damage. DNA or RNA viruses are unique in that their genome can be either. It's always the same for a particular kind of virus. So influenza viruses always have RNA genomes and herpes viruses always have DNA genomes. But nowhere else in the biological world do we see RNA as genome. And that's very interesting. And we're going to talk about that when we talk about where viruses came from. Then often surrounded by a protein coat. Turns out that the vast majority of viruses do have a protein coat. I added this year because I want to include as viruses some naked nucleic acid molecules like this one right here. It's a piece of RNA. It's called a viroid, and it infects plants. It has to get inside the plant cells. It reproduces and moves within the plant and can cause plant disease. And it was called a viroid because people didn't think they were viruses because they didn't have a capsid, protein shell. I don't think that should be the defining character of a virus. I want to include viroids in viruses. So that's why I have often surrounded. In fact, you can see from the diagrams here, most of these viruses do have a protein coat. And so here on the lower left, this icosahedral particle, that's poliovirus. Next to it is adenovirus. These are made of pure protein shells with the nucleic acid inside. We'll learn more about this as we move on. Other viruses sometimes have a membrane. So here's a coronavirus right down here. It has a lipid membrane around it, which adeno and polioviruses do not. So not every virus has a membrane, and many of them here do. So that's an option. But most of them will have some kind of protein coat around the nucleic acid, except for these viroids. And we'll talk about viroids and other naked nucleic acid virus particles later on. Now, viruses have to infect cells in order to reproduce. If they don't, they disappear. And I'm sure that many virus lineages have disappeared over the billions of years that they've been around. They can't find a host, and that's the end of them. But when we study viruses, we have to also study the host cell. So every solution of the virus reproductive cycle reveals something about the host. Many of the great discoveries about host cells were found by using virus-infected cells, and I'll point those out to you as we go along. And these are some, of course, various hosts for viruses. As I said, they infect everything on the planet. I think there's only one organism. Well, there's so many species out there, you can't possibly hope to find a virus for each one because nobody studies them all, right? I always learn that there are more insects in certain areas than we've ever cataloged. But the only organism for which I'm not aware of a virus is Tetrahymena. But I'll bet there is one and they just haven't found it. For many years, C. elegans, there were no viruses of C. elegans, and then they were found. So you just have to look hard enough. So you can study the virus of any organism and you learn about the organism as well. So mosquitoes can be infected, us, of course. This is a very interesting protist that lives in the ocean. It is one of the most numerous protists in the ocean, and there's a virus that infects it, which we will talk about. And these are tulips. These are very prized tulips in Holland. They have stripes. And the stripes are caused by a virus infection. And people used to breed these tulips to make the stripes, and they were unknowingly including the virus because the virus is what interrupts the pigmentation. It makes them stripe. So the other question is, are viruses alive? And I have a poll on my blog here, which I just looked at the other day, that about 7,000 people have taken it. You can see it's pretty evenly split between yes and no and something in between. I don't know what that would be. You're either living or not. And so I've actually thought about this a lot, and I have an answer to this question. And it's not a simple answer. It's embodied on this slide. So when most people think about virus, they think about a particle like that one on the left, that polyomavirus. And that is in no way, shape, or form living. It's a protein shell with some nucleic acid in it. If it's here on the table, it will sit there forever and not do anything. It can't reproduce on its own. So it can't be alive. It has the capacity to become living when it gets inside of a cell. Kind of like a spore when you pour water on it, but a spore has many different energy-making systems and so forth that viruses don't have. So I don't think that's a good analogy. So the virus particle, which I call a virion, the infectious virus particle, is not living. It can't be. But when the virus infects a cell, the infected cell is taken over by the virus. It's now devoted to making virus particles. It's no longer just a cell. It's a virus-infected cell, and it's alive. So I look at it this way. A virus is an organism with two phases. One that's not living, which is the particle, and one that is, which is the infected cell. I think that solves the problem, but people usually don't like two-part solutions like this. And so it's not really taken hold, but this has to be it, because the infected cell certainly is living and the particle cannot be. The problem is, as I say, when people think of virus, they always think of the particle and not the infected cell. So that's my answer to that. The other thing I want to warn you here at the onset of this course is please do not anthropomorphize viruses. It's very easy to do because it makes it easier to talk about them. And if you read any article in the popular press about viruses, they will have viruses doing things. The virus wants to do this, or the goal of the virus is to do this. They have no goals whatsoever. They do not think, they do not employ, they do not ensure, exhibit, display. They don't do anything. They're entirely passive agents. And you may think, well, so what? I understand that. Why can't I say it anyway? It's because if you anthropomorphize, then you're going to misinterpret things that happen. You're going to be giving viruses goals when in fact they do not. And it's very important to look at all the things we're going to look at in terms of virology here with a neutral attitude, understanding that these things happen randomly. Mutations happen randomly in a genome and they may lead to something. But the viruses doesn't have a goal of infecting people and making them sick. The only selective force for a virus is to find a new host. That is the major selective force. It's an entirely passive force. And whatever happens during evolution to make that effective, that is selected for. So try not to do this. I try not to anthropomorphize as well. It's very difficult, but science writers often do because it's very easy. And the alternative is sometimes convoluted. But it's really a warning to not think that way. Don't think that viruses can actively do things. They're passive. Now, the other part of the definition of a virus that I used to use was that they were very small. In fact, I gave them a limit. I said they will pass through a 0.2 micron filter. There's no more size in the virus definition because now we have viruses that are way bigger than 0.2 microns. We have 1.5 micron viruses and everything in between. So size is no longer part of the definition, but I do want to give you a sense for virus size. Here, they are very small. Here's an E. coli at 100,000x, and there is a bacteriophage virus attached to it. So you can see it's much smaller than the E. coli, but it's not hugely smaller. Here in panel D is HIV particle, and that C, the rod-like virus, is tobacco mosaic virus, a plant virus, which we will talk about momentarily. So they're relatively large compared to E. coli. And then that little panel has a variety of objects which are magnified to a millionfold here. And here we have a carbon atom. We have tRNA, an antibody molecule. There's a ribosome and some other cellular components, actin and myosin and so forth. And here's a poliovirus particle. So it's about the size of a ribosome. And so on this panel, it's quite small compared to E. coli. And that's not the smallest particle. So 30 nanometers is getting there, but there are viruses between 20 and 30 nanometers in diameter. Those are the smallest ones we know of. And so here's another way of looking at the size range of virus particles. First, on the bottom, there is a cell with its nucleus and various organelles, a eukaryotic cell, of course. And here are some virus particles outside of it, and we've magnified them on the right. And the bigger one is a herpes virus, about 200 nanometers in diameter, so one of the larger ones. And there's poliovirus, again, about the size of ribosomes. So quite small compared to a cell. Lots of these virus particles could fit inside of a cell. On the top is an interesting scale which goes through from the left, plant cells, to atoms all the way on the right, and how you would visualize each of these entities. And you can see viruses fall somewhere in the middle between bacteria and some of the smaller components. And you typically cannot see viruses by the light microscope. A few can be seen. I'm going to show you one in a moment, but mostly you need to use electron microscopy to see viruses. And of course, everything smaller than that, you need to use these sorts of techniques as well. This answers the question, how many viruses could you put on a pinhead? In case you were interested, there's a pinhead which has a dust mite there. That little pink thing is a dust mite. And in the square here are a variety of very small objects, including some red blood cells. One of these is a lymphocyte. One of these is a yeast. And here we have a few bacteria. And then you can barely faintly see this longish structure there. That is a virus. That's Ebola virus. It happens to be very long, so you can see it here. So it's very small with respect to the pin itself. The pin is about 2,000 microns in diameter. So you could put 500 million rhinoviruses on a pinhead. Those are the viruses that cause a common cold. And if you have a common cold, every time you speak, you're making an aerosol, and those little droplets are full of rhinoviruses, enough to infect many people. And that's part of the strategy for viruses to transmit. Make lots of progeny and go from one host to another. Now, we used to think that viruses were smaller than 0.2 microns. I'm going to tell you why in a moment. And some of the smaller viruses we knew about, rhinovirus, so it's about the same size as polio. It's about 30 nanometers. HIV, slightly larger. And herpes viruses, about slightly larger than HIV, as I showed you. But about 15 years ago, a group of viruses were discovered, which we now call giant viruses, because they were bigger than anything we'd ever seen. And one of them is Mimi virus, shown here. Made the cover of American Scientist. And you can see it's quite larger than any virus that we knew. Here's an electron micrograph of an infected cell with 2 Mimi virus particles in it. We'll talk a little bit about giant viruses and what they mean, but they have expanded the size range. And we have even bigger viruses now. This one is the biggest I know of. On the left, that is a light micrograph of this virus, Pandora virus. Just put it under a scope in the lab. They're 1.5 microns long. So you can see these in the light scope. It's called Pandora virus. That's the biggest virus we know of. And the genome is 2.5 million base pairs of DNA. Huge. Mostly encoding genes we have never seen before. And the more viruses we discover, this is incredible. The more viruses we find, the more genes we find whose functions we have never seen before. The proteins don't look anything like the proteins we know about. So it's a very exciting time to do virus discovery because you can find all sorts of new things. There is also a fundamental difference between viruses and bacteria in the way they reproduce. In bacteria, shown on the lower right here, you take a single bacterium, you put it in broth, it starts to divide. It makes 2 and 4 and 8. Binary fission, right? If you put a virus in a broth, it will do nothing. It needs a cell, and it will get into the cell, but it will not divide. It will make parts. It will make genomes and capsid parts and assemble them, and then you have an infectious particle. A fundamentally different way of reproducing. Make the parts, assemble the final product. And as a consequence, you add viruses to cells, you have a period where nothing seems to happen. There's no infectious virus being made. We call that the eclipse. And then at some point after infection, it varies depending on the virus, then you see new infectious particles made. So a fundamental difference between viruses and bacteria. So let's take a moment for a quiz here. Which of the following is true concerning bacterial versus viral replication? Viruses must assemble using preformed components. Bacteria do not replicate via binary fission as viruses do. Bacteria must assemble using preformed components. Viruses do not have an eclipse period, and viruses replicate by binary fission. Okay, how do we?
All right, so here we go again, y'all. Which one of the following is true concerning bacteria versus viral replication? You don't know, say you don't know, man. Don't guess your way out of into it or out of it. Just tell us. Bacteria replication or viral replication? Which one is true? Viruses must assemble using preformed components. Bacteria do not replicate via binary fission as viruses do. Bacteria must assemble using preformed components. Viruses do not have an eclipse period. Viruses replicate by binary fission. Woo! That's a tough one, huh? Y'all done seen some of them words together, huh? There's a little delay. You know, I'm gonna let it delay. Now again, binary fission is a kind of asexual reproduction. It is the most common form of reproduction in prokaryotes, such as bacteria. It occurs in one single cell eukaryotes, like an amoeba. Come on now. What you got? What you got? What you got? What you got? What y'all got? Chavis said one. Viruses must assemble using preformed components. It's a bunch of fives in there. Talking about viruses replicate by binary fission. Woo! I'm trusting the good students. Man, I was looking at the merch. You need to get you some of that merch, man. Get you some of our merch. Link in the description. Get you some merch. Come on, y'all. Where the answers at? I'm gonna give y'all like 30 more seconds to answer. The answers then get short, huh? When people in doubt, the answers get short. If you don't know, you don't know. Just say you don't know. It's all good. Ain't nobody expecting y'all to know stuff about viruses, man. That's why we come on here and we try to have these conversations regarding the coronavirus and you know, things that, you know, certain type of pandemic stuff going on and all that. All right, hold up. I'm gonna go ahead and press play.
We do. Yes, viruses must assemble using preformed components. 91% of you got that. A few of you got the other ones. But that's the key. Everything else is wrong. Right. Bacteria do replicate via binary fission. And so therefore C is wrong as well. Viruses do have an eclipse period. They do not replicate by binary fission. How old are they? So we now can sequence many, many viral genomes and do computational biology experiments to estimate evolutionary rates. The oldest genome that I know of so far in the literature is a retrovirus that seems to have existed 450 million years ago in the Ordovician period, which would be about right here, where the first land plants are emerging, and it seemed to originate in the oceans, which is kind of interesting because there you've had the first animals, fishes growing up or evolving and then coming onto land. So maybe the viruses evolved in the ocean and came onto land. And this is one of the interesting critters that lived then. Orthoceras lived 488 million years ago. Hard to go beyond that because the genome mutation rates of viruses are so great that the data disintegrates beyond a certain age. And we have no fossils, of course, where we can withdraw nucleic acids from. Nucleic acids don't last very long in fossils, and so it's very hard to get them. There are some old fossils, but not millions and millions of years old. I happen to think that viruses originated before cells, which would be many billions of years ago. I think the first viruses were actually self-replicating nucleic acids, which could replicate outside of cells. Self-polymerizing nucleic acids, this is one of the ideas for the origin of life. We call those replicons. They're replicating nucleic acids. They're essentially viruses, and from those emerged cells. And then later on, the viruses said, well, they didn't say, of course, viruses entered cells because that was a hospitable place. We'll talk more about that when we talk about evolution. Now, if you start to move through recorded history, you start to see evidence for viral infection. We didn't know what viruses were till about the end of the 1800s. But here on the left, a 700 BC vase where it says rabid Hector, referring to rabies virus, presumably, or rabies, the disease. And on the right, an Egyptian carving from these years 1580 BC, where this young man has a foot that looks exactly like what poliomyelitis is today. We call it a drop foot. The muscles are paralyzed, so you cannot keep your foot elevated, it just drops. We don't really know if this is polio, but it looks very much like. And there are lots of references in history throughout the years that suggest virus infections were around. In the 11th century, we know that in China, the variolation was practiced. Now, at this time, smallpox was ravaging human civilizations. This was a virus that evolved from probably camels and rodents to infect humans. As the populations of humans grew, these viruses invaded them. And smallpox was particularly devastating, killed a lot of people. In China, they practiced.
Man, my bad. But yeah, you seen the video up with Edward Jenner. Give me a second. So he showed Edward Jenner up there. He was continuing on with the lecture. I'm gonna replay it here in just a second. I hit the wrong button. But let me get back to the point and bring it on the screen. But what he don't say is he don't get too much into let me take my zoom off. Y'all like how I did that? Hit that all on that Mac mouse. All right, but hold up. So let me go back here. We should all be familiar with that last name. Here, Edward Jenner. And let's see what he said about it, even though we already know. But then going to the end of this, a lot of us dealt with some of this stuff at the end, but I'm going to let him rock all the way out. And then I'm going to fill some questions, and then we'll go over that. So we got about like 14 minutes, a little less than that.
Populations of humans grew. These viruses invaded them. And smallpox was particularly devastating, killed a lot of people. In China, they practice a kind of vaccination. And this is in the historical record where people with smallpox, they would take the pustules, grind them up, and blow them into the nose of someone to make them not get the disease. They had no idea this was a virus, of course, but they just knew that some people who survived smallpox never got it again. So they said, we will give it to you. And about a third of the people died, but the other 2/3, not an FDA approvable vaccine. But they did that. And then the wife of the English ambassador to Turkey, the practice had reached Turkey by then. She noticed this and she brought it back to England, and they started practicing variolation. And then in the 1790s, Edward Jenner did experiments to establish vaccination, which we'll talk about later in the vaccine lecture. But let's talk now about the origin of this virus concept. How did it grow from a point where we didn't know anything about any microbe to where we now have this concept of virus? So we start with Leuwenhoek in the 1600s. He invented the microscope. And for the first time, we saw that there were things that were living that you couldn't see. Because people thought, everything I can see, that's all there is to the world. But he said, oh, in water, there are little things swimming around. The concept of microbes. Pasteur, of course, took it further. He showed that microbes can do good things. In particular, bacteria can make wine and cheese and so forth. And so at that point, we know there are bacteria. There are microscopic organisms that can do these things. And then finally, Koch, towards the end of the 1800s, said these bacteria can cause disease. So he established the germ theory of microbiology. So by the end of the 1800s, we know about bacteria, we know what they can do, and we know they cause disease, but we don't know anything about viruses yet. A key point here is this, that we use the word virus way before this. You can find as early as 1728 the use of virus in the literature to describe any agent that causes an infection. Now in 1728, we don't know about bacteria, but we know that people can transmit a sickness to each other. And people started to say, well, this is a virus that's doing this because virus is a Latin name for poison. So they thought a poison was spreading from one person to another. They thought it was some kind of liquid that could be spread in the air. When Pasteur came on the scene, he decided that every virus is a microbe. Remember, he was studying bacteria. And he said, these bacteria are viruses. They're all the same. These things that are making people sick, they're viruses. So again, we don't know what a virus is yet, but we're using the name virus to explain infectious diseases caused by bacteria. A little confusing, but bear with me. Key discovery, this gentleman, Chamberlain, he was working with Pasteur, and the water they had in the lab was dirty, it was contaminated. So he designed a filter to clean it up. It's called the Chamberlain filter. It has a porcelain insert, and you put water in it and you try a suction. The water goes through, the bacteria are retained on the filter. So you can make clean water, and he ended up selling this, and in Paris they could have clean water, Chamberlain filter. Pasteur used this in the lab, and he found that whatever it was that caused rabies, he thought it was a bacterium, went through the filter. And he said, oh, it must be a small bacterium then. And the pores are about 0.2 microns in size. All right, towards the end of the 1800s, by the people are smoking big time tobacco. And in Germany and other parts of Europe, there's a disease going through the tobacco crops called tobacco mosaic disease. It makes the leaves blotchy like this, and it impacts the price of tobacco. So people want to know what's causing it. So a couple of scientists took the Chamberlain filter and they said, it must be a bacterium. So let's grind up the leaves and filter it. But what they found was nothing stuck to the filter. The agent of the disease went into the broth. Okay, so one of them said it's just a small bacterium. But the other scientists said, no, this is something different. And that's where the concept of virus as a different entity emerged. They called these filterable viruses now. Remember, viruses are everything. They call them filterable viruses. These two individuals discovered the tobacco mosaic disease filterable virus. Again, virus meaning some kind of a liquid. For many years, people think that viruses are actually liquids. In 1898, the first animal virus was discovered, foot and mouth disease, a very important virus of cattle, which we deal with to this day. And as time went by, the key concept was not only are they small, they pass through this filter, 0.2 microns, which we now know not all viruses do, but they will not replicate in a broth. They need a cell in which to grow. So if you take the filtrate and put it on a tobacco leaf, it will grow. But if you just incubate the filtrate by itself, the virus will not reproduce. But again, at this point, 1898, we still think viruses are liquids. Many new viruses come to be discovered. Yellow fever, rabies, smallpox, polio, etc. Even up to 1933. We're not sure if they're particles or liquids yet. We're still calling them filterable viruses. And here is a nice chart of the discovery of bacteria and viruses. So Koch introduces efficient methods for working with bacteria. You see the number of bacteria discovered increases. And the number of viruses also goes up. And up to 1935, we're still calling them filterable viruses. But a key experiment, there are actually two key experiments that change that. The first is the development of the electron microscope by Helmut Ruska in Germany, and that's the first EM there on the left. In 1939, he takes a picture of a virus-infected E. coli, and he sees these particulate things on it. These are bacteriophages. First picture of a bacteriophage. For the first time, we realize a virus is not a liquid. It's a particle. Our next question is, which is a key concept first discovered about viruses that distinguish them from other microorganisms? Too large to pass through a 0.2 micron filter, only replicate in broth, make tobacco plants sick, small enough to pass through a filter, none of the above. How do we do? Small enough to pass through a filter, that's right. They're not, at this point, they're not too large to pass through a filter. Today they are, but back then the key point was that they didn't. They don't replicate in broth. Of course, they need cells in which to replicate. Making tobacco plants sick is not a key feature. Another key experiment, the same year as the electron micrograph, 1939, people are doing growth curves with bacteria and viruses. Remember, you take a bacterium, you put it in broth, it starts to divide by binary fission. If you take a virus and infect cells, there's always this lag, this eclipse. And they said it can't be a small bacterium because bacteria don't have this lag. It has to be something different. So between the EM and this, it was clear that a virus was something different than a bacterium. So they stopped calling them filterable viruses. They were just viruses now. So we had viruses and bacteria that were agents of disease. So there's a little convoluted history there, but I wanted you to know that our current day understanding of virus wasn't always that way. And if you happen to look in the literature and see this in the old days, they were talking about something else. Nowadays, we know lots of information about viruses. We take pictures of a variety of them using the electron micrograph. Here's a bacteriophage, a particular type that has a lovely tail and tail fibers. Tobacco mosaic virus, the one that started all of this, the one that caused this disease, rabies virus, and a virus that causes gastroenteritis. We know great details about many viruses. We can solve their three-dimensional structures. We can know where every atom is in the virus particle. This is two different views of poliovirus, one of the viruses I've spent most of my career working on. We know the chemical formula for the virus because we know how many atoms it has. And on the left is a very high resolution three-dimensional structure where we can locate every atom in 3 dimensions, and on the right, a lower resolution. We'll talk about how we get these later and what they mean. This is the virus that I carry on my cell phone. This is poliovirus with its receptor. And I do know other people with viruses on their phone, but not that kind. We classify viruses to make sense out of them, not because there's any natural organization, but because humans like to classify things. And I'll often refer to classification throughout this course, so I want you to understand what I'm talking about. We classify viruses today mainly by the sequence. We sequence the genome, and we say, it's this virus. That's how the new virus in China was identified. From one of the patients, they isolated virus, they sequenced the entire genome, about 15,000 bases, put it in a computer, do a phylogenetic tree, and boom, it's a coronavirus similar to SARS virus because you can see exactly on the tree. So that is how we classify viruses. And of course, if we get something new that we've never seen, we have nowhere to put it on the tree, and it exists on its own until new relatives come. In the old days, we used to use other criteria like the shell, the membrane, the dimensions, but we really don't use those for classification any longer. We use the classical hierarchical system of classification, which you've probably encountered in other organisms. We start with orders. In this course, I'll mainly be talking about virus families. They all end in viridae. So for example, The Ebola viruses are part of the Filoviridae or the filovirus family. Then we go into genera, in this case, Ebola virus, and then virus species. So I want you to understand when I say Filoviridae or Picornaviridae, I'm talking about the family level and so forth. Virus discovery is no longer driven by disease. Of course, when disease occurs, we'd like to know if a virus is involved, but a great deal of virology now is to know what's out there and how it affects ecosystems. And here's a great experiment from a few years ago where a number of research groups isolated 220 different invertebrate species. These are all collected in China. You can see various insects, crustaceans, worms, mollusks, and so forth. And they just ground them up and asked, what viruses do we find by sequencing, complete sequencing. And in each of these organisms, each of these species, they found new viruses. In the RNA viruses are in orange here on the top. You can see lots of new RNA viruses in each of these. And most of them are new things that we had never seen before. And so this drives virus discovery now, the ability to sequence very quickly many genomes and know what's there. Now, you may ask, why do we care about all this other stuff out there? Why don't we just focus on the viruses that cause disease? Well, here are some reasons. First of all, I said earlier that viruses outnumber cellular life by at least 10 to 1. They have the greatest biodiversity on the planet. And we know that viruses exchange genes, not only with each other, but with their hosts. So that's important, and we need to know about that. They drive global biogeochemical cycles. We're going to have electron ecology this year for the first time to see how viruses interact with the broader global ecosystems. And we'll see how they're so important for the recycling of many nutrients. As I also alluded to, they can be beneficial. So we want to know what viruses out there are beneficial. For example, there are some newly discovered viruses that only infect insects that are now being used as a vaccine platform in humans. So you never know where the good for us is going to come from. And finally, we do want to know what's out there because the next pathogen could be out there. This new coronavirus in China is not a surprise. People have been sequencing viruses in bats throughout China for many years and find lots of related coronaviruses. So we knew the opportunity for spillover from what will probably be a bat into humans was there. And that's another reason why we do this. Now, you may think that this is all very complicated, but in fact, in the next two lectures, I'm going to tell you that this can be simplified because of these two facts. First, genomes are obligate molecular parasites. They have to get inside of a cell. And once they're in the cell, they have to be translated by the host translational machinery. So we're going to use that to take these billions and billions of viruses and simplify them mechanistically so you can understand how they work. So next time we are going to talk about the infectious cycle. That is what happens when a virus gets into a cell all the way to reproducing. How does that work and how do we study it?
All right, y'all. So that's it for that right there. We're having a good little time. I ain't gonna hold y'all up, man. We be on this thing 2 hours. It's a good build. It's been a nice little time. Let me check the chat. Why am I thinking the movie Outbreak? Oh, yeah. Do viruses that don't affect humans combine with those that don't affect us? No, man. Because if it don't affect us, it's not gonna go with something else. We've never seen a virus unite with another virus to infect us. We're constantly always, you know what I'm saying? We dealing with viruses every day. You got viruses in your house, living amongst you. You got all kind of stuff. But nah, Let me see. Remember, he said they use always pass through. Yeah. Appreciate that, Gary. Appreciate that. Appreciate that. And I'm a little quiet, man. Twitter fingers right now. But yeah, I ain't gonna hold nobody up, man. I appreciate everybody for coming out, man. Again, like the show, share the show. Let's keep it informative. Hopefully, this information is acceptable. Anybody want the bite-sized version of the nurse? It is on Facebook, on my Facebook page, on Kofi Facebook page, so you can grab it there and share it on Facebook and other social media platforms. Again, I'm gonna say Shimon Hotel, and we'll see y'all again, next time. I didn't label this science with Sean, but pretty much you already know where it's going. So peace out. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, the books is in. The books are in. Yep. They in. Here.